Check 1 2 1 2. What's up, Team Kestävä? Good to see everybody live and in person, sorta, kinda. So I think I have all of the technical things figured out. Let me know, obviously, in the chat if you can't hear me, if you can't see me, if I'm stuttering a bunch, but let's hope all that stuff is behind us and that we have a great little live stream here and I can interact with all of you. I think it's just going to be a short one today. I was thinking maybe this would be like a couple hours, but honestly, I realized that on the camera that I use, I have a battery and it's not able to be plugged in for continuous power. So I think we're only going to be able to eke out like maybe 30 minutes of live footage. So if you have questions, type away. But right now, I'm just going to be hopefully answering any questions that you have, more just general stuff. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything on the fly in terms of actual like design questions today because I don't have my normal setup. This is all kind of new to do this live, so maybe I can do it. Like I have like scrap paper here and my own structural engineering solved problems book. This is for the SE exam review, which I'm currently going through right now. So maybe we can find something in there, but I don't know how I would convey the information across to all of you. But without further ado, I guess I'm just going to be chilling here for a little bit and hope to say hi to anybody who comes along. So obviously if I'm looking down, I'm like looking at a paper or something. I'm going to figure out this whole thing to make it that you can see kind of what I'm working on as well as you can engage in what you're working on, and then we can go back and forth and be asking questions and spitball ideas, anything engineering related, professional life related, differences between when I was in school studying engineering and then transitioning into the professional world, kind of what are some hurdles to get over. We can talk about all that stuff. And it doesn't even need to be engineering related, right? I mean, we can just talk about things you want to talk about. So all right, I think we're looking good. I got kind of like a side monitor over here that's looking at the feed from, another YouTube page, just so I can somehow confirm that everything's working, because I'm pretty sure it was a total train wreck the first time I tried this morning. So anyone who did chime in for that, apologies on that total steaming pile of, you know what, but I think we sound pretty good here. Can anyone confirm that? Oh, and we got someone in our chat. Let's see what's up. So Montesir, I want to say, great name, by the way. You passed your PE exam. Can you explain the effect of salary after passing PE and SE exam? That one's a really good question, actually. So I think from my own experience, it has differed from the actual firm that you're at. And the philosophy of that firm. So in more firms, at least in the US, so this is in, the United States, outside of the United States, I'm not sure how it works. I'd love to see a little commentary from people outside the US working as engineers to give us some feedback. But for the US, it all comes down to the firm's philosophy. I've seen plenty of my friends who are also structural engineers, environmental engineers, geotechnical engineers, and transportation engineers. So we cover all the bases for civil engineering. And a lot of them, yes, they did get either a pay bump after successfully passing the PE, or they got a kind of like a one-time bonus for passing the PE as well. It didn't turn out to be a significant pay bump for many of them. For me personally, I was actually did not receive any additional compensation, and actually another buddy of mine also did not receive either a bonus or a pay bump, because it was the company's philosophy that to pass your PE is something that is just mandatory going through your professional career as an engineer. It is just a stepping stone that you should by default be doing, and therefore why do you deserve a pay bump or an increase? So take that as you want. I think most of the time you do see some type of benefit in terms of salary increase after passing and becoming a professional engineer. I mean, the things that you get to do with a professional license is basically you can run your own practice if you so choose to. You can stamp and sign documents, but most of the time that kind of ranges if you'd ever get to do something like that, depending on the size of the company that you work for. So if it's a really small, mom and shop kind of pop, then yeah, mom and pop kind of shop, 2-3 people, then yeah, you might be using your stamp and you might be signing documents. And in that case, you would be of a lot of value to that firm, and most likely you would see a pay increase. But if you're in maybe a large, structural or civil engineering firm, there's a lot more liability that goes into it, and they actually determine a very small group of, most of the time it's the top principals within the firm, that are designated to actually stamp documents. And in that case, you being much younger and just getting your license and your stamp, you would not fall under their insurance umbrella, most likely, so you would not really ever need to use your stamp. That's something typical for bigger firms. But I will say you should always pursue your PE and your SE. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. I know the SE is another step, but it helps you learn a lot more. It helps you become a much better engineer, and it just forces you to sit down and to study. Because for some people, it requires that hardcore, deadline that you need to start studying. And as you study, like we know on this channel, you start to learn so much more. You start to understand the built environment so much more around you, and then you're able to apply that to your work life. So all in all, I think even if you don't see a direct link of salary increase from just passing the PE, I think you ultimately become a better engineer. And then down the road, you ultimately get paid more because you are, in fact, a better engineer. So that's my take on that. I think I asked this question a while back in kind of the community poll talking about CLT, mass timber design. Has anybody been exposed to that? So I'm in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, where there is a lot of lumber, a lot of timber, and that is a really hot topic for an emerging building material that I know just about every architect under the sun wants to get their hands on and wants to use in their structures. And so I know it's been asked a lot of structural engineers to start to design using those materials. But has anybody else been seeing that, or is this kind of like a niche market, do you think? Iman has just asked, what is your opinion about switching to computer-based exam? Do I prefer that? That is definitely a good question, and I think in these following months, a lot of people are going to be asking that for themselves. So I never had to take the PE exam, online. I got to take a paper exam, but the FE exam, I think for most people, I don't know how long ago the switch was, but I think the FE exam is 100% digital now. So I did take that exam digitally, and I can say if I had a choice between paper and digital, maybe it makes me sound old, but I preferred the paper portion. It just felt more natural. I mean, that's what most of us grow up doing. I don't know about COVID nowadays with school and stuff, but growing up, you're just used to taking, a paper test, whether that's a spelling test or your high school math test. It's on a piece of paper, you have a pencil, and so I was more comfortable with that format. And then I remember on the FE exam, there were rules involved with how you could actually answer. You could flag things to go back later. And that stuff just added one little layer of complexity to an already, stressful situation of taking an exam that I didn't really like that much. But that's me being picky. It wasn't that difficult to figure out. So moving forward, I think digital is going to definitely be a different ballpark. I think it's going to be a different experience altogether, especially if it's true that they are moving away from you being able to bring in your own materials to the exam and providing one single document that you get to use to reference to take the exam. So it sounds like they're setting it up just like the FE exam, where you're given a booklet of standard information that everybody gets in order to take the test, as opposed to you getting to bring just whatever the heck you want to bring. So that'll be interesting. I'm going to be going into that in future videos here because we are making that jump very quickly, and I know that all of you are studying and you're going to want to get answers to that right away. So I'm going to be diving into that, figuring out the tough questions, getting them answered, and getting them back to you. All right, so we got a little mass timber love up in the chat, which is great. So D. Laux, I want to say, loves mass timber and hopes to see it increase in prevalence in the eastern U.S. Yeah, that's true. I know that there's several facilities that manufacture mass timber, and what I mean by that is glue lams, CLT, mass plywood panels, a combination of the like. And most of the time, mass timber design is also blended in with sustainable engineering as well. That's one of the big talking points. Green engineering, LEED, platinum certified, all of that. It is argued that it's a material that is carbon negative, which means that in order to create the materials of CLT and glue lams, you have to grow trees, right? And by growing trees actually absorb carbon out of the atmosphere in order to grow. So it is by harvesting that material, you're actually taking carbon out of the atmosphere, even though then you go through the process of manufacturing those products, which then add carbon back into the atmosphere. But there's starting to be extensive studies as to the process of that, where they're showing extreme benefits from a carbon footprint standpoint in comparison to steel, concrete, and other products. So, but I'm going on a tangent there. The reason I bring this up is that there are several facilities in the US now, and I think that there's more facilities that are slowly popping up that drive local regions to be able to have access to these materials, because sometimes in lead design, it's all about sourcing from a relatively close location to your site. You don't want to be, you can't call yourself just in, broad thinking, sustainable if you have a structure in Florida, but the architect is speccing out windows that are from, Siberia or something, and they need to be shipped all the way across the world in order to be installed in this building. That transportation cost and the fuels associated with that just become completely non-sustainable, right? So one of the guidelines is that where you get points for LEED certification is that you spec a lot of your materials locally so that you don't have to have too much transportation wise and fuel costs and all that kind of stuff for the environment. So as we see hopefully more manufacturing facilities of mass timber pop up, I'm hoping that also increases the areas where mass timber is used for structures. So let's hope. I'll be ready. Very good point. So they're saying that the contractors are still adding a lot of premium on CLT and mass timber because they're unfamiliar with it. That is a very good point. One thing that I think to take away from that, you can play devil's advocate and you can say, well, the contractor is adding a premium because they're unfamiliar with it, so they're taking on more risk. I see that point of view. But you also hope on the other side that we start to have contractors emerge that say, hey, a lot of contractors aren't taking on this product. They're charging a lot to use it because they're unfamiliar with it. Why don't we specialize in it? And that can be all that we work with, and then they become top dog very quickly with this emerging material. You hope that there are firms out there, construction companies out there that are thinking that way. They're thinking long term as, well, it may be a little risky and it's a newer product and we need to figure out more things in order to construct it properly, but why don't we just rip the Band-Aid off now and get super involved with it, work very tightly with architects, engineers to figure out ways of putting these materials together that are beneficial for everybody. And then once that ball starts rolling, then you could have your go-to contractors that don't need to charge premiums anymore, and then it just becomes a typical building material. That's looking on the bright side, I guess. But I absolutely agree that we do run into that where contractors charge that premium because it is a newer material. So, but I also think that's where I think project managers and firms in general should start to get into more contact and collaboration with actual manufacturers and also overseas. I mean, you look in Switzerland, you look in some Scandinavian countries where they've been using these materials for a long time. They've have contractors that have built with it for a long time and assembled it for a long time. So I think it's being comfortable with reaching outside of your comfort zone and going and asking individuals from other parts of the world how they get it done and how you can apply it for yourself. I don't think it needs to be this closed box where everyone just needs to figure it out for themselves type of thing. That's also one of the main drivers of Team Kestävä is that it's about the collective knowledge and bringing it in and refining it. Everyone can bring something to the table if you let them, if you open the doors up. Also, I do just want to point out that, so we're about like 20-minute mark live. I know we're just getting going, but like I said, I'm on battery power right now for my camera that I'm using. So you never know, I may just cut out here abruptly. So I do apologize for that, but I will work on getting a stable source of power so that we can keep these things churning, do some longer sessions where we can study together. I'll be showing you what I'm studying, what I'm working on, and I hope that you chime in with what you're working on. So I don't know, did we got anybody in the house that up in the chat that currently studying for the PE or the SE or the FE? Matt Woodruff in the building, everybody. So Matt has actually been pretty active on the channel, has left some great feedback, some great comments on some past videos. So, love that he's here right now. And don't worry, Matt, I'm not going anywhere for the time being. But I did just chime in to say that, I'm on battery power. So if it cuts out abruptly, that's my bad. But that's where I'll be going. Taking the PE for the 4th time. Hey, it's not about the number of times that you take it, all right? Because I think most of you know I actually had to take the FE 2 times. I had to retake that exam. And as long as it doesn't bring you down, then it shouldn't mess up your, frame of mind. If you're not failing anything, then it just means that you're not pushing yourself. So don't be afraid of failure at all. I always stress that. It's really not a big deal. And actually, it was at the point of me studying for my PE exam that I realized I had this huge mental shift in what it meant to take exams and to learn things. Prior to the PE exam, all throughout school, I never considered myself good at taking exams. I always did what I thought everybody else did, which was go through some practice problems, go back over your notes, and only 2 days before or a day before your exam, and just kind of absorb everything, and then do your best in the exam, and then just dump it all out of your head after you took the exam. That was sort of how college was set up with my classes, which I realized is a little silly. You should be in an environment where you're truly learning the information, and in order to do that, and that's also on my part, it's not just the system, it was on me as well for trying to cram at the last second. But that's what I thought studying was and test taking was. But it's not. It's actually taking bits of your day each day, sitting down and wanting to learn the information. There's some classes you're going to take where, let's be real, you don't want to learn it. It's underwater basket weaving, you don't really want to do it, and it's just something you need in order to get a degree. But for your main courses, if you are, in school to be a civil engineer, then the classes that pertain specifically to civil engineering and the stuff that you're going to be doing in the professional world, that should be exciting for you. You should be in a frame of mind where you're like, yes, I want to learn this. And when you run into complicated things that you're stressing about, you shouldn't look at it like, oh no, I don't know this, so I'm going to fail a class or do poorly in a class. You should think about it like, oh no, I don't know this, but I want to know this because this is my future. This is the stuff I want to be involved in. And as soon as you kind of make that relation, that it's not a short-term goal. It's not, oh, and next week I need to know this in order to take the exam. It's like, hey, this is never going to go away. I'm going to continue to do this work for maybe a long portion of my life. So why put off trying to understand it? Let's just sit down now and start grinding through it one step at a time. Because if it's truly what you want to do, then it should be something you're excited to learn, not something that you're forced to learn. Total side tangent. Sorry about that. Comey, you're very welcome. I'm glad to be here live. I think this is pretty cool. Matt, I like it. I absolutely know you're going to get it. I hope the videos have been helping. I hope that there's, anything else that I can help provide. We'll get you through this thing so we can get that PE on the name. It's going to look real slick. I know it's right around the corner for you. Yeah, I totally hear you, Matt. Struggling, balancing study time and workload is a big deal. One thing that I've told several team members that have reached out via email is that, and I think I referenced this in a couple of my videos, but dedicating, what it means to actually dedicate time to just doing one task. I'm someone who can't multitask that well. I like to think that I can, but in all reality, I like to stay kind of laser focused with what I'm doing. And if it's something I'm interested in, everything else around me just kind of goes to the wayside. And from that, I do take a strength from that in terms of studying, because I told myself every morning I showed up to work. Work started at 8 a.m. And I told myself, well, I'm going to get in the office at 6:30. I'm going to turn everything on, get coffee or water or whatever it was. And actually, I didn't even turn on my computer. I just got to a start time, which was 7 a.m. for me. And I said, I'm going to open my book. I'm going to start studying, doing a practice problem, looking through a code, working on my tabs for my manuals, and just going through. And it didn't matter, my phone was off. Everyone else was blocked out around me. There was no one in the office yet, which was great. So I didn't have those distractions. And I solely focused and said, this is all that I'm doing. 1 hour of time is going to go by, and it doesn't matter what's happening in the world around me for that hour. And it allowed me just to dial in. And I really, really enjoyed those 1 hour sessions. Sometimes, I said this before, I would get through maybe one practice problem, like literally. Maybe it would have taken 5 minutes to actually do, but going through and analyzing the problem, stretching back and saying, this problem stems from this code or this provision or this design manual. It involves this type of material, which means I would go here. Do I have a tab on that yet? Should I tab it? Have I seen multiple of this type of problem before? What's the prevalence that it's going to be potentially on the exam? It was all these little tiny problems that kept stacking up and questions that kept stemming off of this easy problem that sent me down a rabbit hole. But that's the type of studying that helped me solidify what I knew and what I didn't know. So it wasn't about my old train of thought, which was like, oh, I had 1 hour to study. I solved one problem, and maybe I got it wrong. And it was like, oh, well, that's not really studying, as opposed to another day where maybe I did 10 problems in 1 hour. And then I would say, oh, well, that's me studying because I did 10 problems. But I might not have known and retained what I was actually doing. Active recall is a real thing and is actually something I'm studying with and learning right now. So on a tangent, that might be another thing that we talk about is active recall. If you don't know about it, I suggest looking it up. It's pretty cool. And it's a study method that helps you retain more knowledge more quickly, but it does require more time in the actual study process. So don't just break it down into pure numbers when you're studying. Don't be sweating to think, I have to read this chapter. By the time I finish this chapter, it means that I'm done studying and I know everything. Don't give goals like that. Just say, I am studying. Doesn't matter where you stop. Doesn't matter where you start. Just be present for that chunk of time rather than the goal that you set for yourself. Okay? Josh, I'm not sure, my man, but maybe get that looked at. But maybe you just had pulled in a tasty trout, and you threw it on a little bit of butter. I don't know. That could be the smell. Let's hope so. Deluxe, studying for the FE exam. Good luck with that. Make sure that you know that manual by heart. That was the best thing for me. Is, again, not trying to memorize everything and try to do everything all within my head, but just using the tool that they gave you, right? It's a great tool, that reference manual. It's going to be there on the exam, so why not use it to your absolute advantage? Understand each practice problem that you do for the FE and how it relates back to that reference manual. Because for the FE, the trick is that every single problem relates back to that reference manual. So you can find the exact equation for each problem in that manual, okay? That's the best way to study for that one. Oh man, it is getting pretty bright in here. I just looked at my screen. My shade's down right now, so sorry for the Jesus light in the back. It's just super sunny here right now. Hopefully I can get that figured out here, but working on the office a little bit. We're working on the setup, hopefully to enhance the experience of the entire team when they come visit Team Kestävä. Trying to figure out more ways to get involved with all of you. And let me know, are there any changes that you want to see to this channel that you're just like screaming at me, being like, you got to do it this way, or you got to introduce this? Always let me know, all right? I will never take it in a bad way. I always want that feedback from all of you that are here so that we can make this better together. Chimaze? I watched your vids all the time. I passed. I love that. I love it. Congrats. Very, very cool stuff. Ooh, and Matt says he's studying rigid diaphragm today, and he already checked out the rigid diaphragm example video that we got loaded up there. I love it. You know, small world, I'm actually in my professional career working on a rigid diaphragm right now as well. So I actually needed to reference back to that quickly to just recollect myself. I had been working with wood structures and flexible diaphragms for a while, so had to wrangle my mind back around the rigid diaphragm construction type and how it distributes based on relative stiffness of your lateral elements. So, and I had a funky little geometry. So it was a fun refresher for me, but I think that one's a great one. And that video, even though it's a basic geometry, that's the most you're going to see on the PE exam. So if you can lock that one in, that's a great one. Calculator error. So Matt's talking about punching things into the calculator wrong, or maybe, you know, being a little fat fingers maybe on the keys and not noticing it until it's too late. Hey, I hear you. You know, I think there's that funny, I don't know if you call it a meme or what, but where literally when you're like in a high stress situation, you're doing like 2 + 2 on your calculator just to confirm that 2 + 2 = 4, because you don't want to take anything for granted, you know? And I know that can be the case on the exam. Notice here, I got my TI-36X Pro. So this is the Beauty, the exact one that I used on the PE exam. I don't know. I would think that this one is still in the specs that you're allowed to use. And I love this thing. Ever since studying for the PE, my fancy graphing calculator is literally in the closet behind me. It's just collecting dust. It's never used anymore. And you realize that this is mostly all you need to do most structural and civil engineering work. And what it also does is, because you need to use something like this, you need to break down problems further into just basic math and algebra, which is, I mean, that's key. The ability for you to break it down into a simple set of equations means you're a proficient engineer. You know, not everything needs to be complex, especially complex problems. You should be able to make complex problems as simple as possible. That's what makes you a great engineer. TI-36 Pro, Matt's got the same one. Yo, calculator gang, I love it. You know, I don't know what to say. If you're finding you have some time left over. I don't know if you do, but if you do, start to get comfortable with going back and maybe when you get an answer, write it down, but then do the calc again since it's fresh in your head and just rifle through it. And if you for some reason get the wrong answer, maybe that's a way that it picks it up. That, oh shoot, maybe I punched something in wrong, Just rapid fire, do it 2 times, get two solutions, and they should, be the same. That's one way that you could check. I know I've done that before. And then I forget, actually, we're going to go into the calculator. I'm going to go to mode. Yeah, so make sure you're in degrees, right? You're in normal. I'm in float, and then I'm in real for my mode next to my second button. Just make sure you're in all that stuff. You don't want to be going into radians by accident. That is a recipe for disaster. I know people have cold sweats at night thinking about their calculators accidentally being in radians or degrees, taking an exam in college and needing the opposite, so always check on that stuff. Make sure your hardware is running smooth, okay? Vigra. How to handle when... Oh man, I feel you. That can happen sometimes when... So Vigra is saying, hey, how do you handle when your project manager or a senior engineer comes to you and you might not know what to do, and they give you guidance and say, oh, do it this way, this method. But then you go through the work of doing that, and then they come back and say, oh, crap, why'd you do it this way? It actually needs to be done this method, this alternate method. And they look at you and think that you potentially were the one that, created the error in doing it this way, but in reality, they were the ones that told you to do it that way. It ranges from person to person because everybody's different. And every company's different. But I think ultimately, when you do get into the professional field, you need to be comfortable enough with just speaking openly. That doesn't mean that you just get to say whatever you want. But I should say, learn to speak openly and respectively. So if someone told you a method in which to do it and you are unfamiliar, so then you take their guidance and you go through with it, but then they come back and they say, hey, what are you doing? It needs to be done this way. I think you need to be able to sit down and talk with them to say, the reality was that this is what you told me to do. I'm newer to this material or to this method or this analysis, and I wasn't sure what to do, so I came to you for guidance. You told me to do it this way, and so here we are. I think that's completely understandable, because it also could help them it could bring to light that they didn't even realize they told you to do it that way. They might have been super busy at the time. Most senior level engineers are. They have a million things going on. They can only get involved for minutes at a time in several different projects. So, or they may have meant one thing and actually told you to do it another way, or you interpreted it differently. There can be many things that caused that problem, not just solely the fact of, oh, they told me to do it this way and now they're telling me to do it another way and they're mad at me. I think if the cards are laid out on the table and it's clearly explained that these were your, this is your interpretation of how to do it, and the guidance came from them directly, I don't think that if they're a reasonable person, that they can get mad, as long as you are respectful with the way that you tell them. And if they do get mad, then, in all honesty, that might just mean that they're a bad, PM, coworker, and that they need to do some learning themselves, okay? And that you just need to kind of brush it off, all right? But that's one way to go about that, Vigra, is just being honest and forthcoming with what happened, So how's the stream still doing? I'm still a little curious. Does it seem like it's pretty smooth? Can you hear me all right? Let me know so that in the future when I do this, that we continue to have a smooth stream, or I can improve upon it. Sarah IB, any tips to study for the PE? I have several tips on some previous videos. If you go flip through Kestävä's page and you go down and check out, I think, my 5 tips for the PE exam. But anything off the top of my head, I'm taking the exam on October 22nd. Oh man, it's that spooky time of year. No, I took mine in April. Any tips? Here's one tip I don't think I mentioned. Don't stress about the first problem on the exam. And I say that from personal experience that I felt incredibly ready to take the exam. And when I was done with the exam, I had thought, and this is not a brag, okay, team, not a brag at all. I thought that it was decently straightforward, and that I had a good grasp and understanding of each problem that came at me. I didn't think there was really anything that tripped me up, and I had some time left over. But the first problem, I still remember. It was the perimeter of a strip footing and for the exterior perimeter of a building. And it had dimensions on it, but there was a missing dimension, and they asked you, what is that missing dimension? And you're probably like, holy crap, that sounds super, super easy. That must have been a slam dunk. I totally blanked at the opener. Like, I flipped the paper over and I was just like, crap, how am I supposed to find this? I don't have, this or that or the other dimension in order to get this. And what I did, which I'm thankful for, is I didn't panic. I just simply moved on. Well, I did start to panic, but I collected myself and just moved on to the second problem. I told myself that if there was one that was going to trip me up, circle it and just move on. Like, don't spend any additional time trying to sweat over it. If you don't have a clear path in your mind straight away with how to proceed through, just move on to the next one. Because this exam is also pushing how much you know within a certain time frame. It's designed for, like we know, 6 minutes per problem. And if you spend a minute or end up being like 5 minutes by accident stressing and trying to figure out how to navigate a problem, well, all of a sudden you've wasted the time for that problem and now you're behind. And that clock is going to keep ticking. So if you get into it and you kind of got those pre-exam, jitters, which most of us have, you might run into that kind of brain fart on the first problem. Just go right by it and just go to the next one, or whatever one you get to where you're like, oh, I easily know this one. Get one secured, and then the confidence just starts flowing, okay? And at the end of the exam, I went back to that first problem, and I was like, plenty of time. Now I had confidence behind me, and I realized that it was like the stupidest problem. It took me like 30 seconds to solve. It was so simplistically easy, and I couldn't believe that I stressed up over it. So, and that's just because of my, my frame of mind. That's all that it was. The problem didn't change at all or anything like that. It just, I I couldn't put the pieces together and I stalled. So don't stall with time. Just move on, okay? No problem, Sarah. Got you. Oh, Caesar. Do you know some applications in structural engineering for machine learning and data science? I'm not going to lie, I am starting to become much more intrigued with data science in our industry. I think it is, for as much as data science is growing all across the world, I mean, computer science is the hot, flashy engineering nowadays, Silicon Valley, all that kind of stuff. Big towers, working on crazy things, getting paid a lot of money, all these crazy offices. And I am curious as to why our industry actually has like a total drought with its integration of computer science. I think there's a huge need for it in our industry. There's a lot of areas where we just grind through and we plug and chug, or we, spin our wheels. But and I think machine learning and data science can solve all of that. But I think I don't know. I don't know what it is at the moment. I think that we have kind of some old school ways of thinking that are kind of creating a barrier in our industry to allow some change to happen with computer technology. And that's an area that I'd like to focus on a little bit more. So I am actually on the side digging into things down that type of rabbit hole to see what we can apply. Taking baby steps to integrate some of that tech into our industry to help us for the better. So that's my quick take on it. I'd love if someone knows a lot more about it and applications of it right now, totally spam it in the chat. I'd love to hear all about that, or send an email, or leave comments sprinkled about the page. But I think that's a great talking point that I also would like to get more into soon here. So maybe we try to bring some people on who have the answers to that or are working kind of in that arena, and pick their brain a little bit. Because again, I don't have all the answers. So let's go find the people who do, and then let's share them with everybody. I don't know, is anybody else interested in, the computer science realm or computer engineering, I guess software engineering? Have you considered going into it before, or want to get more involved in it? Matt's saying they had an outdated version of StructCalc. I'm unfamiliar with StructCalc. That morphed into Vetravius, which sucks something fierce. Yeah, I guess I'm more curious about not necessarily analysis softwares or modeling softwares, Revit and AutoCAD and all that stuff, but more curious on the data collection and how to apply that to the efficiency with which we design, I guess. I think there's data everywhere nowadays. Everything that humans do, data can be collected on it. And I think that's there's no shortcoming of data that's available with the construction of structures. I think there's a vast swath of data that's just sitting out there with how we design, with how we erect and build, with the materials with which we use, the time it takes, the money it takes, and then the future life of the structure, how it deteriorates over time. I think all of that data should slowly start to be tracked and used, because I think there's some great information that can be pulled from it in order to greatly enhance the ability with which we design, construct, and maintain structures in the future. I mean, we see it. That's a huge problem nowadays, right? Is buildings collapsing. You know, the recent one in Florida was, you know, an unthinkable thing that happened. There's the bridge collapse several years ago. There is that huge structural like stress crack in that bridge in Mississippi, I think, not too long ago also. But I mean, just in general, deterioration of structures and infrastructure all over the world. What better way than the things that we build new? We have a way that we can continuously track the health, you could call it, of the actual structure. And then you could know through data when something is actually getting close to its lifespan, when a retrofit is required, or when things start to become dangerous. Being able to read the health vitals of a structure, I think, is life-saving. I mean, we are all about, at the end of the day, engineers are about protecting life. That's utmost what we do. And I think that type of route with the integration of computer science in our industry is a way that we can do that. But that's just me. I don't know. What do y'all think? Interesting. Okay. Reading Matt's comment as to what strucalc is. You know, Caesar, so Caesar asked, do I know any software for strut and tie models? And also, do I know of any software for pre-stressed concrete design and analysis? I haven't gotten crazy involved with pre-stressed, and I've only done strut and tie models by hand. I haven't gotten crazy involved with strut and tie analysis also. Like I said, it was more simplistic ones that I was able to do by hand. So I am not the best source, and off the top of my head, I couldn't recommend any softwares that I know of. I know that there are softwares. Is Safe one of them? I'm trying to think. Is Safe one, or is that just Gravity? SAFE. Yeah, but I'm not the best to talk to for pre-stressed. I'd have to get more involved in that. SP Column, SP Wall. I think they have SP Foundation. I know that stuff gets into, obviously, SP Column is concrete columns. SP Wall is concrete shear walls, bearing walls, blah, blah, blah. That might get into strut and tie a little bit, but don't quote me on that. Caesar out here asking the hard questions, and I love it. Well, we're approaching, believe it or not, 1 hour, and I actually can't believe that. Hey, sorry if I've just kind of been babbling here. I know that my videos are kind of a little more refined, take a lot of the fluff out of things, but I always like interacting with all of you. I think that's the best part of my day, is hearing questions that you have and topics that you want to talk about, because I think that's the best part about this. So keep them coming always. Always let me know how I can improve. And I think I'll probably cut it at the 1 hour mark. So we got about 5 more minutes. So anyone that's been quiet in the back seats of the auditorium, I see you way back in there, behind Jose. Jose, get out of here. And raise your hand. Let me know. Okay. I'm already super impressed with the amount of people that have commented in the chat. I think it's pretty unreal. Matt's still looking for a good beam, column, footing, and rafter calculation program. You know, a simple one, and people might get angry about this, but I remember EnterCalc being really straightforward, and when it's just for, you know, beams, that was a pretty nice, simple, straightforward program that did, I thought, a decent job of designing beams. Again, that's EnterCalc. One that gets a little more involved, which I don't love to use all the time, but it has a lot of options, of design options, is TEDS, Tekla TEDS. But I think that's a much pricier analysis software. So if you're at a smaller firm, you might not have that at your disposal. You know, Riza, I use Riza a lot. Riza 2D for, although that's more like analysis. But I run it for beams a lot too. Steel, mostly steel actually, now that I think about it, not concrete. You could run it with wood, but I still stay away from wood when doing that. TEDS is actually very good for designing wood members, columns, beams. So Tekla TEDS for wood is a great option to knock things out quickly. Caesar just asked, hey, do you recommend the Steel Tube Institute manuals? I'm thinking to buy these manuals, but I don't know if these manuals are a waste of money or if they're of true value. And Matt also just asked me to spell Tekla TEDS. I just spammed it there in the chat. You know, Steel Tube Institute manuals, I'm going to look this up. Let's see. And I think what I can do here is, let's see if I can do this on the fly. If I do this, all right. Let's see what we got. Hopefully you guys can see my screen all right. I just jumped over. I have not used these, Caesar, actually, now that I'm looking at this. HSS Design Manuals, Volume 4, Trusses and Bracing Connections. So is it just more in depth? 2016, 2016, Volume 4, 2016. Let's see. Let's see what the price is. What we talk about here. So everything, we did print 355 doll hairs. My question to you is, do you think it's any different than the information provided in the steel manual? I'm guessing they have much more examples in here. And they go much more into depth about, obviously, just HSS members. To ensure engineers, architects, fabricators, and anyone involved in structural steel have a complete technical resource for using HSS, we have created the HSS design manuals. The manuals are written by structural engineers for structural engineers and other active in the design and specification of HSS. Section properties and design information. I feel like that's in the steel manual, right? Member design. I feel like that's in the design manual. You know, you have your tables in the back for flexural design for HSS members. Connections at HSS members. That might go a little, volume 3, connections might be a little beneficial, although I think it's chapter J in the steel manual where you go into specific tube steel connections. And they have a bunch of different failure modes for that. So although in the steel manual it doesn't do a great job of explaining it, so that might be really beneficial. And then volume 4, truss and bracing connections. Oh, same thing. I actually think chapter J is for truss and bracing connections. So I think you can get a lot out of your, let's do that. Sorry, I'm jumping around here. I think you can get a lot of information from your steel manual, and then if you need additional info, like if you're at a fabrication job or you work with like exclusively HSSs in all these funky different configurations in a real specialty niche firm, then yeah, I'd say probably pick these suckers up, right? But if you're just designing with them every once in a while, depending on the job, and it's all kind of really basic standard stuff, I think there's plenty of info provided to you in the steel manual. So that's just my quick little take. But I am intrigued now. I'm probably going to see if any of my coworkers or within my group, friendship group, have those, because I'd like to see inside of them. Hey, Caesar, no problem. Hey, and hey, you know, that's just my opinion, so let me know. If you do end up buying those manuals, or one of them, send me an email, leave a comment on another video, and let me know what you think of them. You know, if they're worthwhile, heck, the team's going to want to know that, and maybe they're going to want to add it to their home library. I got mine right back there. I can always add to it. So we are over an hour now. I can't believe this battery is still kicking. But if anyone has any final thoughts, I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. If it's still the weekend wherever you are, it's Sunday for me. I'm going to grab a bite to eat, but let's get ready for the coming work week or school week, you know, whatever it might be. Get in a couple more problems, study a little bit more, learn something new, and until next time, hey, this is Rich for the first time live with Team Kestävä, and I will see everybody next time. Later.